not through society and not through societal change or societal conversations, but through courts, almost like a fiat through the courts. Is it the job of the court to be interpreting the law or to be opining on sociological and biological matters? And you can say, yes, it was just an observation made by the Chief Justice through the course of this hearing, but observations also have weight. Maybe not legally, but certainly on the front pages of newspapers, on primetime debates, they certainly do carry weight. But first, the story. All right, so let's break down first what the arguments were in court which led the Chief Justice Chandrachud to say what he said. Appearing for one of the petitioners, Abhishek Manu Singhvi argued that there is a whole range of combination of persons with special biological features. He said it's not only man and woman, that one category is sex and the second category is gender. He also said that a male body can be imbued by female physiological instincts and psychological instincts and vice versa. And that if the bench were to legalize same-sex marriage, then it should not be limited just to same-sex. He also said that the correct formulation should be two consenting adults along with bodily, gender and sexual spectrum. Now, contradicting Abhishek Manu Singhvi, the Solicitor General of India, Tushar Mehta, who appeared on behalf of the centre, argued that biological gender was the gender of a person. He said that acceptance of societal relationships is never dependent on judgments or legislations. He went on to say that acceptance of societal relationships comes only from within society. He also argued that even the Special Marriage Act, the legislative intent of the act throughout has been that the relationship is between a biological male and a biological female. At this point, the Chief Justice of India, D.Y. Chandrachud, was quick to interrupt the SG and he said, there is no absolute concept of a man or an absolute concept of a woman at all. And that it's not just the question of what your genitals are, it is something far more complex. The Chief Justice also pointed out that even the Special Marriage Act, when it says man and woman, the very notion of a man or a woman is not an absolute based on genital structure alone. Now, let's break down what is it that the petitioners want and what the Chief Justice's remarks could possibly imply. It could widen the ambit of this ongoing hearing. The petitioners are arguing that not recognizing same-sex marriage amounts to discrimination, which strikes at the root of dignity, human dignity of LGBTQ couples. But the CJI's remarks signal a preference for gender fluidity. Petitioners have reminded the court that LGBTQ citizens are about 7 to 8% of the population, but the CJI's remarks could mean that the Supreme Court wants to examine if the Special Marriage Act can be expanded beyond gender binaries. The petitioners also argue that legal protection is available in about 15 or so legislations. This is the right to wages, right to gratuity, adoption, surrogacy, succession, etc., which were not available to LGBTQ, but the Supreme Court may be wary of any ruling on marriage which infringes on personal laws. All right, so let me now open this up to our debaters tonight. We'll also be joined by Salvatore Babonis in a moment on the other side. But Surabhi and Paramita are LGBTQ activists and a same-sex couple. Sadhvi Jaya Bharti will be joining us. She's a Hindu scholar and activist, and Rahul Ishwar, author and activist, also joining us. Let me start with Surabhi and Paramita. Surabhi, you know, the matter before the Supreme Court is very clear that LGBTQ activists and same-sex couples say that they have a right, as do all heterosexual couples, a right to marriage, right? And if the court feels that they are being denied that right, then yes, the court, in its wisdom, is entirely capable of interpreting the law or to change the law so that the law is not violative of anyone's dignity. But to say that there is no concept of absolute man or absolute woman, doesn't that bring a whole new idea of gender fluidity, which is perhaps not even what the petitioners in this case are arguing for, or at least that's not the ambit for what they're arguing for in the first place? Surabhi.
I agree to that, but gender fluidity does exist. So, the Chief Justice of India, Chandrachud sir, saying that there is not absolute concept of a man or a woman is very true, because we have trans people as well. We have transgender people, trans man, trans woman, who are biologically not man or a woman, but they can take hormones, they can go for SRS, that is sex reassignment or reaffirmation surgeries, which is also the reality. And what about their laws? Their laws
just a small
are
correction
also
there.
being
One
included
second.
in the...
Surabhi, there are people who are trans, who are biologically either man or woman, but they want to change both their biology and their sociology. And it's up to them whether they want to change it or not. But to say that biologically there are people who are both men and women, or biologically there are people who are not either man or woman, I'm not sure that is correct, at least from a biological point of view.
Yeah, not the biological point, I would say. If you talk about genitals, then definitely genitals are specific, that is for a man and a woman. We call them male or a female. But then you cannot forget that there are intersex people as well, who may have both the genitals, internally or externally, of both the genders. So you can't say that. Also, non-binary people who might not identify with both the genders, or certain people who might identify with both the genders also exist. So what about that?
No, one second. So my point is, and I'll ask Paramita this, is it the job of the court to say who is gender fluid, not gender fluid, who identifies as gender binary or gender non-binary, or is the remit of the court to decide, are these people, does the law of the land as it stands apply equally to these people as it does to any other citizen, and if it doesn't, then we need to reinterpret the law? What is the remit of the court?
Well, I would say that I believe that every other people is gender fluid, because all of the people, like 9 out of 10 people in the world is from the LGBTQ spectrum, and the fluidity of their gender is, I would say it can be from 1 to 10, when 1 is being heterosexual and 10 is like being homosexual.
You are saying that a majority, 90% of the people in the world do not identify themselves as heterosexual. They are gender fluid. Where are you getting this data from?
This is Saka.
Definitely. The gender is very fluid.
No, where are you getting this data from?
No, I would like to interrupt in this. Gender fluidity is absolutely different, and sexual orientation is absolutely different.
Exactly.
So gender identity and sexual orientation are two different aspects.
No, let's be very clear.
So I would say that
I want to ask.
One
second. Let me ask you very, very clearly. What is it that you want from the Supreme Court? Do you want from the Supreme Court that two people whose sexual orientation is towards the same sex be allowed to marry and have the same rights as a couple from two different sexes? Is that what you want from the Supreme Court? Or do you want from the Supreme Court the legality to say that I can be a man on some days and I can be a woman on some days? Because it's not the same thing.
Well, what I want to say in this case that being a citizen of India, I have all the rights that a heterosexual couple has. And just because I am in a same-sex relationship, that doesn't mean that I don't get the option to get married to someone whom I love.
Yes.
And I do have that authority to be in this society.
Yes.
I get all the, I pay the tax as well,
Yes.
like all other people in this in India. So yeah, definitely I must get all the right.
So which is why I keep coming back, Paramita. What has that got to do with, one's ability or one's desire to say that, sometimes I identify myself as a man or sometimes I identify myself as a woman? I mean, one has nothing to do with the other. Okay, so let me go to.
So, yes.
Okay, let me go to Rahul Ishwar. Rahul Ishwar, I don't want to get into the religious construct. Okay, that's every religion. I said this on yesterday's show as well. I think every religion in India opposes same-sex marriage. Hinduism opposes it. Christianity opposes it. Islam opposes it. I'm looking at this purely from a legal point of view. All right. The Supreme Court. Yeah, the Supreme Court. Yes, it is the job of the court to see, are there citizens in this country to whom fundamental rights are being denied because of their sexual orientation? And if they are being denied, then yes, the corrective action needs to be taken. But for the Supreme Court to say that gender is a fluid construct or that there is no absolute man or absolute woman, I mean, first of all, these are, I mean, forget about the fact that for a moment that they're Western ideas, they're woke ideas, but even in those Western societies, these are extremely contested ideas. It's not a universal idea.
Absolutely, Saka. Two submissions. One, we earlier spoke of gender, then moved on to gender neutrality, gender fluidity. Now, with due respect to Honorable Chief Justice, he's going to a space of gender nihilism, saying that these things, an absolute man and female doesn't exist, is scientifically inaccurate. And I apologize for using this word. He is going into the terrain of wokeism, which is very unfortunate. Even in US, there is a huge debate regarding the entire thing. See, I respect homosexual community. I am against homophobia. I am against any kind of discrimination. But we are all afraid whether, our liberal spectrum is stretching is too much. I don't want to name the person. That's the reason why I use the word liberal spectrum. The liberal spectrum is taking it too much and stretching it too much. The elasticity is being tested to this extreme end. That's the reason why these kind of statements saying that there is no absolute concept of
what do
man
you
and
say?
woman.
Okay, Rahul. So Rahul, what do you say to people? And there may be some of them who are born as a man but identify as a woman, or vice versa, born as a woman, identify as a man. What would you say to them? Do they not have rights? What is it?
So they have rights. That's a variation in behavior that needs to be studied. Even in animal kingdom, there exists such kind of example, which is a deviation or a variation. I wouldn't use any other word which is offensive to the community. I respect LGBTQIA, but at the same point of time, there is a serious debate, even in scientific community, scientific circles regarding this. That's the reason why our submission is simple. Let the parliament debate this more. Let the will of the people also come. Let us debate it at the temple of democracy. But with due respect, some people in our judiciary, and with due respect, with great respect, our Chief Justice wants to take it to a very liberal extreme, which is even too woke for even the US spectrum.
Okay, before I go to Sadhvi Jaya, let me go back to Surbhi and Paramita. There are gender as a construct, right? There are gender-specific constructs and there are gender-neutral constructs. Let's say, for example, to get employment in a job, right? There is no gender-specific. I mean, if you are the best qualified for the job, you get the job. If you want to get admitted to a college, if you qualify for the asks of the university, you get in there. But there are gender-specific constructs as well, Surbhi and Paramita. I mean, the usage of bathrooms, that is gender-specific. Tomorrow, if you're going to say, oh, I'm a man on Mondays, but I'm a woman on Wednesdays, so Wednesdays you should allow me to a woman's toilet. I mean, how does that work? How is it going to work?
I know it is difficult to understand socially, but if we try to understand psychologically or psychiatrically, and being a psychiatrist, I work more for mental health and I speak more about mental health. So I think if it is okay for a person to feel like a man on one day or like a woman on the other, and wants to dress like a man on one day and dress like a woman on the other, I know it is hard for the society to digest, but why not just accept it? I don't think it is very hard to accept somebody who may want to have long hair on one day or may want to cut all the hair on the other day.
No, but are you going to allow that person
on one day and may not want to wear makeup on one day?
Once again, are you going to allow that person to use the women's restrooms on some days and men's restrooms on another? What about the other people who are using the restroom? I mean, don't they have rights? Don't they have the right to feel offended?
Absolutely, I agree that it is very. Yeah, it is very debatable, and it may be offensive for a lot of people who are very, very gender specific, like born in a male body and behave like a man, and born in a female body who behave like a woman. For them, it is very difficult to accept people who are gender fluid or non-binary to visit their washrooms. Suddenly on one day one washroom and suddenly on another day another washroom. I understand there should be gender neutral third washrooms for such people. That is what I feel.
So, Sadhvi Jaya, again, I'll ask Rahul also this in a moment. One of the examples that was cited, I believe it came up in the court hearings also, about when it comes to this whole gender neutrality business, about, again, from Hindu mythology, how Vishnu took the form of Mohini to seduce Shiva and they had a child in Ayyappa. Right? This was quoted by one of the lawyers in the hearing yesterday as well. So, their argument being that gender neutrality and gender fluidity has always been a part of Indian civilization and Hindu mythology and so on and so forth. Sadhvi Jaya Bharti. Ma'am, can you hear me?
All right. You directed this question to me?
Yeah, to you, yeah.
Jacob?
Correct. Yes, correct.
Was it to me?
Yes, it was to you, yeah, go ahead.
Hello?
It was to you, go ahead, yes.
Hello? Can you hear me?
We can hear you. I addressed that question to you. Please go ahead. If you can hear me, please go ahead with your answer.
That the question was to me, right?
Yes, yes, correct. It was to you, Sadhvi Jayabharati, yes. Okay, we'll try and go back to her in a moment. Rahul, I know you're a great Ayyappa Bhakt, so this was quoted in the courts, and that's why I'm asking you.
No, Saka, with due respect, that is for the better use of a word, that is nonsense. I don't want to use nonsense. That is nonsense. See, Ayyappa is the son of Shiva and Vishnu, means Ayyappa joined Shaivism and Vaishnavism. It doesn't mean Shiva and Vishnu physically married. That's a symbolic way of saying. There were two warring communities called Shaivites and Vaishnavites, and Ayyappa joined both Ayya and Appa. That's the reason why it is said so. This is the reason why I'm saying many people are misusing mythological references, misquoting scientific studies. Even in US today, there is a whole debate where there is a man who says he identifies as woman, came to fight in a competition for swimming and won the female swimming competition. That's a current hot debate that's happening in US, and many people, including Riley Gaines, who's a swimming champion in US, is contesting this. So you can easily claim that I'm feeling woman on one day, I'm feeling man on one day, and come to a woman competition and say that I want to take part in this. So
no,
it is not
again the instances that are being quoted, I think it was there in the court's hearings as well, and you must have heard about these arguments about the fact that transgenders existed throughout Indian kingdoms and Indian civilization, the fact that homosexuals, there were always homosexual relationships even through historic times, again lending credence to the argument that in Indian civilization and Indian culture this is nothing new. Do you buy that?
See, partially, yes. India has been much more tolerant to sexual diversity. Unlike our Semitic brothers, whose reference to Sodom and Gomorrah are there, Indian culture doesn't have that. But that doesn't mean people can misinterpret. That doesn't mean people can misrepresent. For example, things like Ayyappa. Ayyappa is a totally different phenomenon altogether. He's a Naishtika Brahmachari. But the humble submission is, yes, we all say no to homophobia. We are all against discrimination. But at the same point of time, let us not stretch the argument too much into wokeism, and let us search for a sensible, sensitive middle ground and consensus.
Okay, so that's the reason. Sadhvi Jayabharati is back on the program. So Sadhvi Jayabharati, that question that I asked you, one of the arguments that was cited by one of the lawyers for the petitioners in the Supreme Court was that this kind of gender fluidity existed in Hindu mythology. You had the instance of Vishnu taking the form of Mohini to seduce Shiva, and they had a child, Ayyappa. What would you say to that argument?
Well, that's as much a claim, like I would answer that in the second term, and where I would like to come first here is I've been following this discussion on the panel, and what I find is, like, whether it's gender identification, fluidity, or whatever jargons or terms that we are using, everything, even in the court of law, and not even in India, elsewhere in the world also, it is only a basis of claim, because I identify myself like this, so I should have rights equal to you. It is my feeling, it is what I want. Nothing whatsoever has been tested socially. No studies have been conducted about what would be the impact on the social fabric or in the social structure. It's only, the whole thing is all about claiming. I claim my want because I'm paying a tax. I want to claim this because I'm a citizen, I'm born here. That's why every other institution, whether marriage, whether relationship, or everything, even in the books of the law, if you study, every right that the Constitution gives us, it has certain caveats that this is subject to that. It should not create a public nuisance. It should not create that. It should not affect that. It should not be affecting other. No right is an absolute right. No right comes without a caveat. Nothing in this context has been studied or examined in the because nobody is living in isolation here. What we do impacts the other person. So no social study, no research, nothing has been conducted. It is individual beliefs.
So the claim, ma'am, the claim of the LGBT community, the claim of the LGBT community is they are being discriminated against by heterosexual people, and the same rights are being extended to heterosexual people. That is their position. You cannot deny the same set of rights that one set of citizens get. You're denying that to another set of citizens.
No, I'm not. Nobody is denying anybody anything. You went to the court of law and you're saying that this should be legalized. Nothing in even, I'm saying it, I'm repeating that again, that whether it is right to relationship, marriage, anything, whatever comes in the book of the law, you went to the court of law. So court takes a long route in passing a law, and there is a lot of debate, not only a lot of study goes into it about the social impacts. Nothing here has been asked, but neither court has directed anything to the sociologist or institution to go into a deeper study about the impacts, what are the
Okay.
demands, what will all it entail on the institution of the family or to the offsprings or to the children, whether a child has the right to both, a female parent and a male parent, or whether it has the right before, who defines his right, whether what kind of parent he would want, a gender fluid, what would his choice be. Nothing in this sort. I'm not saying anything in for or against, but no study has been conducted and nothing has been given socially. Coming back to the question that you have asked me, when you quote something, you do not quote an event in isolation. That and Rahul Ishwar has explained it very well, that you just cannot use a particular part of a religious text just to, again, what I say is, endorsing your claim. It is altogether a complete historical story is altogether different. If you use it to it, then, probably I might quote something else from the same text that may be a counter argument. So this
Okay.
should be left there.
Okay, so let me go back to Surbhi and to Paramita. I want to come back, like for example, what we're seeing in sports, I think somebody referred to this, first in swimming, then I think we started seeing this in athletics as well. When trans women started competing, initially everybody welcomed it because that was the politically correct thing to do. But now from within the sporting community, from within the athletes themselves, there is great opposition to trans women taking part in the same sport as normal women do, or as cis women who identify themselves as straight.
Yeah, to that I would like to add that if biologically a person is a man and then that person identifies as a woman, that is a trans woman, so definitely it would be difficult for the cis women to compete with the trans women, because the trans women still have testosterone and the other hormones that a male does, and they would definitely be more physically powerful as per their attributes. And that is the reason I think it is very debatable, definitely, that the cis women do have this issue, that why should trans women be competing with them till the time, until and unless they have completely transitioned to a biological woman.
No, so that transition, I guess, is a medical process. It's a biological process, and I'm given to understand it takes years. The point is that for one person to attain this level of fluidity, the rest of society has to sort of make has to make way, has to accommodate. And has to have the same yardstick as in the case of sports events, for example, which I outlined. You cannot have a cis woman compete with a trans woman, which is why now you're seeing pushback.
Yes, in that I would like to say that trans women can compete with trans women. It can be that easy. But at the same time, I would like to correct you in one thing, that I know that it takes a lot of years for the transition, but once that person has completely transitioned, that is completely finished with hormone therapy and completely finished with the sex reaffirmation surgery, then that person would be completely a biological woman and shall have the attributes of a woman. So then that trans woman who is no longer trans,
even there,
who has already transitioned, can compete with other cis
one second, is it fully, I mean, is there a full transition? Even a person who was born as a man then transitions into a woman, childbearing does not happen, right?
Correct.
So, I mean, my point is that who decides this, and where do you draw the line? Tomorrow, I mean, tomorrow you can say, trans is a community, is a minority, therefore there should be reservations for trans folks in jobs and in colleges. I mean, where does the line stop? And in any case, like I said, right from the start, this has nothing to do with the same-sex marriage legalization debate, which is in front of the Supreme Court.
Give me a moment.
Yeah, to that I would like
Jacob.
to add that what happens.
Yeah, go on.
Okay.
Yeah, Paramita, go on. Finish your point and then I'll come back to Sadvijaya. Yeah. Sorry, Surbhi, go on and then I'll come back to Sadhvi Jaya.
Yeah. So to that I would like to add, sorry, I almost forgot the question because of the interruption.
No, the question is, are we moving in a direction where tomorrow, trans as a gender is going to say that we are a minority? Obviously, the numbers are fewer than the cisgenders, but trans as a gender, we are a minority. Therefore, extend us quotas for college admissions, for jobs. Where does one draw the line here?
Yeah, it is very difficult to say where to draw the line. I know that it is very difficult to say. In this, I don't think the trans people are asking for something different. They are just asking for equal rights. And in that, I do agree with you in that sense that a trans person may not be, competing maybe with the physical attributes that they have with cis people. So that, I think the line should be drawn there somewhere. But after the transition, probably, yes, they can compete if given a chance.
Rahul,
and scientifically speaking,
one of the other
only
other problems I have is, if you look at laws of, let's say, harassment against women or violence against women, it's clearly identified as, a gender, the gender in this case being woman. Tomorrow, if a trans woman, harasses a cis woman, she can claim a mitigating factor saying that I'm also a woman. I mean, so my point is, where does this stop?
And somewhere a line has to be drawn. We all respect and accept that a room should be built for more accommodation. But there are some people in the judiciary who feels the entire edifice should be broken. It should be sabotaged so that something new can be created. That's very unfortunate. There is a conventional system. Huge majority of people are in this particular system. We need to accommodate and respect that. But yes, we need to be inclusive. We need to be more accepting. But the present line of going is too aggressive, too bullying, and I hope that kind of wokeism doesn't get upper hand, because it will be damaging for the entire social fabric.
Sadhvi Jaya, I'll give you the final word, and I keep going back to this. These ideas of trans and sometimes identifying as a male, sometimes identifying as a female, is not a universally accepted concept even in Western countries, right? It is a small section of people who believe in this, who are fierce advocates of this, but even there, large sections of society do not accept that this is a norm. Is Sadhvi Jaya there? I'll give her the closing comment, otherwise I'm wrapping up. All right. Okay, we'll leave it at that. Like I said, the intent. All right, Sadhvi Jaya, final word, 30 seconds. I've got to wrap up after that.
Yeah. I just want to say here, that, all the questions that you've put, and, our, esteemed panelist with me, she has said everything, every question that you've been putting, she accepted that it is debatable, it is difficult, it is yet to be settled. So every argument that we are bringing is like, it is yet to be settled, it is yet to be accepted, it is yet to be, put across in a social fabric. So, before we just go about claiming the rights and asking the laws to be passed, let's first settle all the questions and let us take it as a process. Before we say like everything is debatable, yet we want to get a law passed. That should not be the process. Let's first settle all the debates and the questions that are coming out of it, and then maybe the court should be, got into it.
We'll leave it at that. Thank you very much to all our guests. Like I said, the hearing in the Supreme Court will continue. It seems like, given the nature of the arguments there, and of course these are observations, but there could be potentially an expansion of the ambit of the matter that the court is hearing, and that is not what the petitioners are asking, and I guess that just opens up a Pandora's box in a way that none of us are prepared for. All right, let me also go across and try and make sense of this whole thing about gender fluidity and gender neutrality. What is cisgender, transgender? How can there be a person who is biologically a man but identifies as a woman? How can there be somebody who biologically is a woman but identifies themselves as a man? And then, of course, you have this whole business of pronouns, which, frankly, I don't understand. But Salvatore Babones does. He's an American sociologist. He's associate professor at the University of Sydney. Thank you very much, Professor Babones, for joining us. First things first, the argument, and I'm sure you're also following the fascinating arguments that are happening in the Supreme Court of India on legalizing same-sex marriages. The argument that's being put forth by the petitioners is that you are denying basic civil rights by way of marriage to a particular class of citizens because of their sexual orientation. those same rights you're extending to heterosexual couples, and that is a violation of basic human rights, violation of the Indian Constitution, so on and so forth. Where do you stand, and how do you view this ongoing, not just legal debate that's happening in India, but this is also a sociological debate, I believe?
Well, of course, I can't weigh in on Indian legal affairs. I'm not a constitutional law expert, never mind an Indian constitutional law expert. Of course, thinking on this issue has evolved globally, and different countries have come to different solutions. But let's remember, here in Australia, same-sex marriage only became a nationally accepted norm in 2017, so less than 6 years ago. In the United States, it was 2015. So this is really new territory. Different countries have handled it differently. In the United States, same-sex marriage came in through a similar mechanism to what seems to be going on in India, that it was a Supreme Court decision on the basis of construed fundamental rights, and it was highly controversial. It was a 5-4 decision of the U.S. Supreme Court, so it was by no means something that was a broad consensus. Instead, it was a very narrow majority. In Australia, by contrast, there was a referendum process, and the referendum won overwhelmingly. The referendum, the Australian citizens of Australia overwhelmingly supported the idea of gay marriage. And that's something we've seen in countries where it's been handled via referendum, or in individual U.S. states where it's been handled via referendum. Those states tended, or those countries have tended to approve the concept of same-sex marriage. In places where it has been imposed through judicial fiat, it has been highly controversial.
But during the course of the arguments, it seemed like the remit of the debate on legalizing same-sex marriage had been sort of expanded, if you will, where the Chief Justice went on to say that there is no concept of absolute man or absolute woman, and that gender cannot be defined by just male or female body parts. And I also understand that gender is also part biological construct and a part sociological construct. But are we now moving in a direction of extreme wokeism where, like I said in the earlier part of the program, on some days a person identifies themselves as male, and some days the person identifies themselves as female? Where are we headed with this, and how do we make sense of this?
Well, there was the odd phenomenon of the latest nominee to the U.S. Supreme Court being asked the simple question, can she define a woman? And she said, I'm not a biologist. Now, the funny thing is, for me as a sociologist, I thought she probably should have said, I'm not a sociologist, because our evolving definitions of gender and sexuality have little to do with biology and much more to do with sociology, which is how people choose to live in society. We can easily identify for almost everybody a clear sex in terms of chromosomal sex. People either have XX or XY chromosomes. There are a small number of people who have chromosomal abnormalities, where they have one is the aptly named triple X chromosome, which is a chromosome type that makes women appear extraordinarily feminine, and there are other chromosomal abnormalities. On top of that, there is the phenomenon of intersex appearance at birth, which means that even someone who has, say, an XX chromosome may develop aspects of male anatomical features, and vice versa, right? But these are very rare conditions. For most people, biologically, for most people, the vast majority of people, sex is not really at issue.
So then how do you frame this? Because, like you said, I mean, there are now individuals, as few of them as they are, but there are individuals who may have been born with male sexual organs, who may have been born as a man, but they identify themselves as a woman. I mean, this opens up a whole can of worms in terms of violence against women. A trans woman who identifies herself as a woman can use mitigating factor in a case of violence against women, or even for something as simple as entry into bathrooms, right? A trans woman can say that, I identify myself as a woman and therefore I need to get entry into a women's bathroom, which may be offensive to the other cis women who may be using that bathroom at that time. How do you make these distinctions?
Well, what we used to teach is that sex is a biological construct and gender is a social construct. However, transgender activists have increasingly insisted that no, in fact, gender is a biological construct. That is, the argument is that if the mind perceives the body as being, let's say, female, then the person is female, and the XY chromosome and the male genitalia are pathologies of what is truly a female sexual being. That's a novel interpretation. It's one that's only arisen in the last 10 years, but it is an interpretation that has a lot of power, persuasive power, among certain communities. I can't say that it's false. All I can say is that it's novel. It's something new that people have started to claim that their gender identity is in fact their sexual identity, and the chromosomes and genitals are simply wrong. And ultimately, that's what the new transsexuality is all about. It's about correcting the genitals to match the psychological gender identity.
All right, we leave it at that. Professor Salvatore Babones, thank you very much for joining us here on CNN News 18. Thank you for your time. We're getting a piece of breaking news, and this is an important one. The CBI has now registered an FIR against Oxfam. There are searches that are going on at Oxfam's Delhi office right now. The charge against this NGO is that it is a violation, in violation of the Foreign Contributions Regulation Act, the FCRA. The Ministry of Home Affairs has said that Oxfam misused, just like other NGOs, NGOs like CPR, its FCRA license was cancelled because it was routing funds through other NGOs. Arunima has more details on this. Arunima, what else can you tell us?
So this morning, after registering the FIR, 17th of April is when CBI registered an FIR. And post that, this morning they started raiding the Oxfam India's Delhi office. Searches began this morning is what CBI officials tell me, and they're still on. So about 5 minutes back, they said the searches were still on. Whether anybody has been detained so far, usually what happens is that when these searches are going on, whoever is in the office premises, their digital devices are kept away for scrutiny, and whoever is not required to be in office is asked to either leave the premises, and whoever is needed to open digital devices or provide accounts related information, they are asked to stay back. So I think a similar procedure is being followed by CBI at this stage. The charges are serious. The charges are that Oxfam India, when their FCRA license was not renewed, they started routing foreign funding via other NGOs like CPR. CPR is also in the MHA net. Their FCRA license has also not been renewed. But the charge against Oxfam is much more serious. It is a Prevention of Corruption Act case that is being alleged. The CBI is trying to ascertain if there is any evidence on record to really support the MHA's suspicion.
All right, we'll leave it at that. Arunima, thanks very much for joining us. So those raids are ongoing even as we speak. The FIR was registered earlier today. But let's move on to the other story, and it's coming in from Sudan, which is also now having a domestic political fallout. Sudan is on the edge amid escalating tensions between paramilitary forces and Sudan's army. Caught in the crossfire are thousands of civilians, including 30-odd people from Karnataka. They have appealed to the government of India for help. They've been sending photographs, videos of the kind of dire circumstances that they're in. They say that they are running out of food and water. The building that they have been holed up in has been fired on. They've appealed to be evacuated at the earliest. In fact, that has now had a domestic political fallout with the Congress and the BJP in the run-up to the Karnataka elections. Former Karnataka Chief Minister Siddaramaiah first tweeted that 30-odd people from Karnataka belonging to the Hakki-Pikki tribe are stranded in Sudan and the MEA must ensure their safe return, to which External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar tweeted that he's appalled and that there are lives at stake, so there is no need to do politics, to which Congress MP Jairam Ramesh tweeted that the most appalling response has been from the External Affairs Minister to a former Chief Minister. BJP MP Tejaswi Surya hit back saying that the Congress should not be giving lessons on rescuing stranded Indians and that all Kannadigas will return safely. Now, here's how the Indian government has been monitoring the situation in Sudan. External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar has spoken to his counterparts in Saudi Arabia and the UAE. They are two of four countries who are involved in the process of evacuation of all foreign nationals. India is also engaged with the US, UK, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE, the quartet of countries as it were. It's also working in close coordination with the United Nations. There is a dedicated control room which has been set up in Delhi, and regular reports on the status of the Indians who are stranded there are being taken from Khartoum. I want to first go across to Prabhu, who is an Indian national who's stranded in Sudan. I'll also be joined in a moment by Aishwarya Mahadev of the Congress. Ratan Sharda, RSS researcher and author, is also joining us. Prabhu, first things first, आपका स्थिति अभी कैसा है? आपका जो डेली नीड्स हैं, आप वो कैसे मैनेज कर रहे हैं? कहाँ पे फंसे हैं और आप कितने लोग हैं जो फंसे हैं सूडान में?
खाने के लिए तो हम लोग जो इस घर में आए थे, रेंट ले लिया था, तो जब भी हमारे पास ना दुकान खुली हुई थी तो रोज लाके खाना बना के खाते थे, दुकान सामने ही थी, तो हम स्टार्ट नहीं किया था, हमने रोज लाने का खाना पका के खाने का ये काम करते थे हम लोग
जी।
तो हमें कोई मैसेज नहीं मिली है ऐसा कुछ यहाँ फायर होने वाला है, तो हम कोई मैसेज नहीं मिली हम स्टार्ट करने के लिए, तो एक साथ ही ऐसा फायर होने लगा तो हम इमरजेंसी पूरा डोर लॉक करना पड़ा, तो हम अंदर ही लॉक होना पड़ा, तो बाहर का सिचुएशन मालूम होने के लिए हमको 4 से 5 दिन लग गया
जी।
तो हमारे पास ना जो भी बचे हुए थे जो अनाज उसको ही खाए, पानी पिए। 4 दिन तक हमने खाना तो नहीं खाया था, हमने जो पानी था टोटी में पानी था कुआं में, वो पानी ही पिया सब लोग ने, और बाद में पानी खत्म हो जाने के बाद बहुत परेशानी हुई हमको।
प्रभु ये बताइए कि सरकार की तरफ से कोई कम्युनिकेशन है आया है आपके पास? किसी ने रीच आउट किया है? किसी ने ये कहा है कि आपको वहां से इवैक्यूएट करेंगे? और अगर ऐसा मैसेज आएगा तो क्या आप वहां से निकलना चाहेंगे या आप वहीं रहना चाहेंगे जब तक ये वॉर खत्म ना हो जाए?
अभी तो ये चूज करने के लिए हमारे पास तो कोई आइडियोलॉजी नहीं है, क्योंकि हमको मदद मिली नहीं है, यहाँ पे किसी से भी मदद नहीं मिली है। अभी इसको चूज करने का हमारे को समझ में नहीं आ रहा है, यहाँ रहेंगे या इंडिया जाएंगे। हमारे को कोई समझ में नहीं आ रहा है, क्योंकि हम बाहर जा नहीं सकते, फायरिंग हुआ है। सरकार की तरफ से हमारे को मदद मिल जाएगी, इंडिया बुलाया जाएगा तो हम आने के लिए तैयार है।
आप कितने लोग हो प्रभु? आप कितने लोग हो और कहाँ, मतलब सूडान में अलग अलग जगहों पे फंसे हैं या एक ही जगह फंसे हैं? कितने लोग हैं आप?
स्टेट है कर्नाटक, तो वहां से मेरी समझ में मेरे को जितना मालूम है 700-800 लोग फंसे हुए हैं सूडान में, पूरे सूडान में 700-800 हजार लोग के आर पार फंसे हुए हैं।
ओके, all right. Prabhu, बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद. He is saying 700 to 800, but officially the number that we know, at least from the state of Karnataka, is 31. But let me open this up to both Aishwarya Mahadev and to Ratan Sharda. Aishwarya Mahadev, the contention that's being made by Dr. Jaishankar, the MEA folks, and of course people like Tejashwi Surya is this government has rescued stranded Indians from Yemen, from Libya, from Ukraine. So then why are you politicizing this just because there is an election? Let the government and its agencies do their job in evacuating these Indian citizens from Sudan. How do you respond to that?
Good evening, Zaka. I think first and foremost, these Indians there, or the Kannadigas also that we've highlighted, have been there for the past 4 or 5 days without food and water. It was yesterday when the former Chief Minister, Mr. Siddaramaiah, tweeted and saying, these are vulnerable communities that have traveled there and they are stuck. Kindly help them. That was when the focus and the attention shifted towards it. That was when the Ministry of External Affairs and of course Mr. Jaishankar with his appalling sort of response came out to tell us that these things were happening. But please tell me, how much media attention was on this situation before that? One. Second, how many people had established contact to reassure these people stranded there? Two. And third, is it really wrong for a former head of a state to ask the central government for help and assistance for his people who are stranded abroad? There is no politicization. My former CM did not say a war was completely stopped, as a former BJP president did, saying a complete war was stopped to bring back people. This is not politicization. It is appalling that a man, when asked to do his job, turns around and tells a former chief minister of a state that this is appalling, you are politicizing this issue. There is no politicization.
So let me ask Ratan Sharda, the job of any politician, whether it's chief minister or former chief minister or minister, whatever it is, the job of any politician is to respond to his or her constituents. Constituents reach out, and then the job of the politician is to try and extend help or get the government to extend help. So the Congress is claiming that that's all Siddaramaiah did. There was no need for that rather terse response from the External Affairs Minister saying that this is appalling and you're playing politics. He's, after all, responding to his constituents.
Zaka, a politician is not just responsible for his small constituency, he is also responsible for the nation. You are a chief minister of a state, and you know that around 3,000 people are stuck in Sudan. You talk of only 31 people? How parochial can you get? How parochial and how narrow-minded can you be? You are a Congress and All India party is now trying to narrow itself down to a regional party and behaving like a DMK. Karnataka is the most cosmopolitan state, and people have, and the state has been welcoming all. When you talk of only 31 people or 3,000, and then you make a public tweet giving the location of the person, is that right? Government has done, every government in the past, this government in its own term has done wonderful evacuation, whether Operation Sankat Mochan, Operation Ganga, Operation Rahat, where even foreigners have been rescued. Do you think lack of media attention means lack of government attention? So trying to say that because of that tweet, suddenly government woke up, I think I'm not understood. They have got thousands and thousands of people, a record number of people evacuated. When you talk of only one kind of caste, one kind of people, it is nothing but pure parochial politics.
All right. Aishwarya Mahadev, why reduce it just to parochial identities just because there is an election coming up? Had that election not been there, would Siddaramaiah have publicly tweeted about this?
Did Congress speak about this when the earlier operations took place? No, they welcomed the government.
Okay. Let Aishwarya respond, yeah.
We don't need any lessons on any evacuation programs because from the Gulf War, and post that also, the UP has done its responsibility. When you talk about a parochial mindset, sir, I will not even engage in that, because if Mr. Siddaramaiah had not spoken about these 31 Kannadigas who are part of his state, who are his people, would you have even known about the plight of the thousands of others? You would not. Would you have even made that contact with them? You would have not. And this is not the first time. Twitter has been an asset for people in order of communication from the time of Ms. Sushma Swaraj onwards. A lot of these responses and these sort of requests have come up, and the government, when it's convenient for them, they say we did this, and the power of social media. Okay. But when an opposition leader raises the voice for his people, it becomes parochial.
All right.
And so let me remind you, during COVID, what happened? It was each to their own. It was every state for themselves. It was migrants from UP, Bihar, migrants from here, there, whatever, while the central government stayed blank. While Karnataka also offered shelter, Karnataka looked after its own. I do not believe at any point you talk about this larger idea of a parochial mindset, but tell me, would you have voluntarily
so Ratan Sharda, final word. I got to wrap up after that.
The people of what is happening?
Yeah, let him respond.
Absolutely not.
Final word, Ratan Sharda. I got to wrap up after that, Aishwarya. Thank you. Please yield. Yeah, thank you.
The first of Siddaramaiah, no Congress leader has spoken of all the 3,000 people. And again, to believe that, because I said every party has done its bit for evacuation, and do you think that government is sleeping till you make a tweet? This is how the government works? Sorry. Government eyes and ears are always open. They have evacuated people as and when, with complete courage, complete commitment. And you keep on speaking for last press only of 31 Kannadigas. That is the problem. 3,000 include Kannadiga. Now, for example, CNN didn't say which state this particular person was on the panel. They said Indian. So what's the harm in that? So that is why I say problem is your over-propagandization of every issue, and that is what is going to hurt you, not the government or India.
All right. Okay. We'll leave it at that. Thank you very much, Ratan Sharda, Aishwarya Mahadev. We'll see how the story plays out. Like I said, for now, there is a domestic political fallout as well because of the Karnataka campaign, and this has now been caught in classic Congress-BJP politics. All right, as we wrap up, after Mumbai, Apple is coming to Delhi. The iPhone maker's second India store will be open in Delhi tomorrow. Apple CEO Tim Cook will be there front and center, ready to greet Apple fans. News 18's Devashish Sarkar gets us a sneak peek of what it is inside Delhi's Apple store.
After the Apple BKC in Mumbai, it's now time for Delhi, and we are here at the Apple Saket store at the Select City World Mall. Well, I'm sure you must have been to the Select City World Mall, and you just walk up to the first floor and you see the grand Apple store that is opening April 20th, 10 a.m. onwards. So I'll just give you a quick tour of the store. So the moment you enter from here, the first thing you're going to see is the MacBook Reis, the MacBook Pro, the MacBook Air is there, you have the iPad. Let's start with the Apple Music section over here first. So here is get the best of the audio products from Apple, of course, like any other Apple store. Like I always mentioned that every Apple store, be it in Mumbai, be it in Saket, be it in Singapore, Dubai, New York, San Francisco, name it, the experience is always kept the same. And this time, you get a similar vibes as well in the Apple Saket store. So over here, soon, when you enter on the left side, Apple Music section, then next comes the accessory range. You have all the MagSafe chargers, or whatever kind of charger that Apple sells, you will find in this store. And here you go, all the dual port adapters and everything is there. And now we move on to the Apple Arcade. Well, Apple, if you love to play games, and this is the spot for you. You can really try out your games over here, and you can also get to know new games as well. If you just come over here right now, you see the iMac range. The best part of any Apple store, and this one as well, if you want to try out something, just come and start playing around with the device. Nobody's going to ask you as to, hey, are you going to buy this device or not? What is the expectation? There is no sales push per se at all. This store is quite small compared to the Apple VC store in Mumbai. This is the Today at Apple session area. So you can come, you can sit over here, you can book a slot for the Today at Apple sessions from your iPhone app, the store iPhone app, and you can come, you can improve your photography skills. And there are other kind of training sessions as well, be it basic how-tos, starting from how to fix your phones, like the basic things like USB, memory, or photography skills, or advanced Mac systems as well. Now, another interesting highlight of this store is you get a dedicated Apple pickup spot. So this is the main highlight of this store. So what is Apple Pickup? Well, you like some Apple product, you want to get it customized, you just order it online on the apple.com website, and you can pick it up from here. And this is the entire store that you can see. So it opens on April 20th, 10 a.m. onwards. Anybody can walk in, you don't need to do any kind of appointments. So this was it's a pretty small store compared to the Apple BTC store, but it's in the heart of the city, New Delhi.
Down not allowing women of a certain age into that shrine was because it violates the basic rights of a class of citizens because of their gender, right? And the Supreme Court said that is violative of 14 and 15. Here again, you're violating the basic rights of any individual, rights that you're perfectly willing to give to heterosexual couples, basis the fact that they're sexually oriented in a particular way.
I think, Zara, one of the important things to speak about is that a constitution is not doesn't discriminate and doesn't say that some people need to be given preferential treatment while some people, just because they belong to a minority community, should not be given preferential treatment. When it comes to marriage rights, that's how it is at this moment. There is enough evidence, enough and more evidence that LGBTQIA plus people, LGBTQIA plus families thrive as much as heterosexual families thrive, whether it is about families with children, whether it's families, if you go in the West, of course, you'll not get examples over here because here you can't really adopt a gay couple can't adopt a child. But if you go to the West, you'll see that a lot of people who have adopted, and they are as good or as bad as heterosexual couples. So the entire idea, let's not even get to adoption and other things. When we are sticking to marriage, just sticking to marriage, let me tell you that we cannot have preferential treatment given to a particular sexuality, whereas the other sexuality is completely left out. And marriage equality is our right, irrespective of what my genitals or my partner's genitals are. It's our right. And as long as two adults are deciding that they want to live together, they want to, to have the signing authority when one of the partners is dying. They want to have the right to buy. I think you can still take a bank account together, but but taking a loan together, it's still a hassle. If they want to do that, it also means a lot of economic rise for India. Why would India deprive itself of this economy? Why would India deprive itself, its citizens, of these basic rights to love and to be with the one I love in legal matrimony?
The argument put forth by the centre is that marriage in a country like India is essentially a religious construct. It is sort of solemnized by whichever religion you believe in, and therefore in a country that is deeply religious conservative, this idea of legalizing same-sex marriage may not fly. A majority might actually resent such a move, and therefore the centre is arguing that same-sex marriage should not be made legal. How would you counter that argument?
I would say that our country is known for its secularism, its diversity and its inclusion. The fact that a Special Marriage Act even exists is, is a certificate to the fact that we consider that there are people with different religions who are part of this country. As far as the laws concerning the Hindu Marriage Act and the, the acts around marriage, the personal laws, while we may not have legal sanctity going through that route, it is not like Indians are not getting married under, religious customs. They are very much getting married abroad and within the country as well. Enough